Hello everyone, this is Professor Sexton with a video lecture for paper number 2. So let me begin by bringing up paper number 2 so you can see it. All right, here we go. So for your paper on short stories, you may choose to focus your essay on any one of the following short stories: James Baldwin, Sonny's Blues; Charlotte Perkins Gilman, The Yellow Wallpaper; William Faulkner's A Rose for Emily; or Alice Walker's Everyday Use. So those are the 4 stories from which you may choose. So first thing that you need to do is to choose the story on which you are going to work. Then there are 2 options. You can do conflict or you can do theme. For conflict, what you'll want to do is you want to write an essay that explores the central conflict in the story. In your essay, you must do the following: identify the 2 opposing forces in the story that are in conflict with each other, explain the nature of that conflict, such as why does it exist and what part does each party play in creating the conflict, explore and explain how the conflict develops and or become more complicated as the story unfolds, and then discuss how the conflict is resolved and explain if you find the resolution satisfying or not. So take, for instance, James Baldwin's Sonny's Blues. Now, with all 4 of these stories, there are multiple conflicts. So in Sonny's Blues, you have a conflict between the older brother and Sonny. You have a conflict with Sonny and himself. You have a conflict with the older brother and himself. So there's multiple conflicts. You'll want to choose one that you see as the central one. So let's say that, for instance, you look at the relationship between the older brother and Sonny as the major conflict. So that would be identifying the 2 forces, the older brother and Sonny. Then what is the nature of that conflict? Why does that conflict exist? And then what part does the older brother play in it? What part does Sonny play in it? And you can do the same thing for the Yellow Wallpaper. Like for the Yellow Wallpaper, if you look at the conflict between the narrator and her husband, what is the nature of that conflict? Why is there a conflict between the 2 of them? What part does he play? What part does she play? Then analyze how that conflict is developed and becomes more complicated as the story unfolds. Like for instance, in the Yellow Wallpaper, we know that that conflict between the husband and the wife gets worse. Why does it get worse? What happens to make it worse? And then the last thing that you'll want to do if you do the conflict is, how's the conflict resolved? Now, all the conflicts in all 4 of these stories are resolved, but even though they may be resolved, you may not be satisfied with that resolution. So the last part is for you to explain whether you're satisfied with the resolution or not. So let's look at Sonny's Blues. At the end of that story, that conflict between the 2 brothers seemed to be resolved when the older brother goes to hear Sonny plays and he's finally listening to Sonny and understanding his music. That seems like a satisfying resolution. It seems like one to me. It may not be to you, but if it's not to you, that's totally fine. But then if you look at the Yellow Wallpaper, the relationship, the conflict between the husband and the wife, yes, she gets from behind the wallpaper. Keep in mind, she was never behind the wallpaper to begin with, and her husband faints. But that resolution may not be satisfactory because at the end of the day, he's going to get up, right? And when he gets up, what's going to happen, right? Is this a satisfactory resolution? As I said before, it depends on you. So with this last part, it's your opportunity to decide whether you believe a resolution is satisfactory or not, but you need to explain why you feel as if you do. The second option is to do a theme. Now, this one is kind of tricky because keep in mind, a theme is not one word. So a theme is not something like love, madness, or envy. Those are topics. In order to be a theme, it has to say something that is insightful, revealing, or debatable about the work. So like for instance, remember Nathaniel Hawthorne's The Birthmark. A theme for that would be Nathaniel Hawthorne's The Birthmark shows us that we too often destroy the very thing we love by trying to turn the good into the perfect. That is something that is insightful, revealing, or debatable. That is something that you can talk about, that you can argue. So that's what you want your theme to be. If you decide to go with the theme option, once you've chosen a theme, then you need to choose 3 literary elements in the work that supports that. And some examples would be looking at characters. Like for instance, if you're trying to talk about Alice Walker's everyday use, look at the character of Dee. How does she contribute to the theme of that work that you've identified? Talk about setting. In the yellow wallpaper, setting is very important. Talk about dialogue. If you look at Sonny's Blues, there's a lot of dialogue in that story between the older brother and his mother, and various dialogues between the older brother and Sonny. How do those play along in the theme? You can look at point of view, recurrent images, phrases, things of that nature. You only need to choose three. So if you go with this option, you want to make sure that you choose the three that works best to support what your understanding of the theme is. Then for your introduction, so like what I've done here is I give you an outline of how to structure your paper. So for your introduction, you need to start off with 2 or 3 sentences that provide a general introduction to the central ideal of your paper. So for instance, if you're talking about Sonny's Blues, maybe your theme focuses on music, right? Because music is very important to that story. So if you have a theme that deals with music, you'll want to start off with 2 or 3 sentences that talks about music in a general sense, but still related to what you're going to do. Then you transition to the story. When you transition to the story, you need to give the author's full name in the title. So you'll say something in James Baldwin's Sonny's Blues. We see how music becomes a very important instrument for bringing people together, right? But notice I give the author's full name and the title of the work. If you do Charlotte Perkins Gilman, give her full name, title of the work. Once you give the full name and the title of the work in the introduction, you don't have to give it again. When you refer to the author throughout the rest of the work, just use their last name, such as Baldwin, Faulkner, Walker. You may want to come back and give it at the end in the conclusion. So you'll transition to the work and what it does. And then you want to end the introduction by giving your readers an outline of how your essay is going to be structured. So if you're going to talk about theme, what 3 literary elements are you going to use to support your theme? Are you going to focus on characters? Are you going to focus on symbolism? Are you going to focus on dialogue? That needs to be mentioned in your introduction. If you're going to do conflict, then you're going to talk about the nature of the conflict, how the conflicts develop, and the resolution. Those are the 3 points. The last sentence of your introduction just needs to give your readers an outline of how your paper will be structured. And then with your body paragraphs, you're just going to organize them around the main points. Generally, a paragraph should fall somewhere between 5 to 7 sentences. So that's what you want to do. Make sure that each point is a separate body paragraph, and make sure that it clearly states and explains how your point relates to your main argument. So make sure that it's clear what you're writing in that body paragraph relates to what you're saying about conflict or what you're saying about theme. Also, you need to use direct quotations from the short stories. So you need to introduce them correctly, you need to incorporate them correctly, and you need to use parenthetical citation. That's what part 2 of the midterm has been about. So you want to go back and look at that, and that's what you want to do. And then for your conclusion, you may want to return to that general idea that began your paper, but you now want to show your reader how your analysis has helped us better understand the story and that ideal. So don't think of your conclusion so much as an ending. Think of it as a way of moving the conversation forward. Your paper also needs a title. Your title needs to be something other than paper 2. It needs to be something about what your paper is about. So if you're doing Sonny's Blues, maybe you want to call your title Brotherly Love, because you're focusing on the relationship between those 2 brothers. Or maybe, something creative, something that piques interest. So that's what your title needs to do. And then you need to do MLA formatting. So on the first page of your paper, you need your first name, your last name on the top left-hand margin. And then on the right-hand margin, you need your last name and the page number. Then my name, Professor Sexton, just like this. You just copy this verbatim. Then the course, English 102-FNT1, just like this. And the date in the European format, 12 November 2022, then the title. This is what your first page should look like. Then for every subsequent page, you just need your last name and the page number. So for page 2, it's your last name, page 2. For the third page, your last name, page 3. You don't need this information again. For this paper length, you want somewhere between 3 to 5 pages because that would be about right for this paper. I don't know why Blackboard constantly does this to me, that it stops showing my document. It is back up. Good deal. So you'll want to do that. And the last thing, if you want me to read a draft or an outline of your paper, you need to send it to me by by Saturday, November 5th, either as a Microsoft Word, Google Doc, or Page Docs. I know that this document is incorrect, that it says Thursday, November 5th. It should actually say Saturday, November 5th. I will correct this before it goes up onto Blackboard. Keep in mind for the drafts or the outline, they do not have to be complete. So if you don't have the entire paper, that's totally fine. You can send me an introduction and the first 2 body paragraphs. You can skip around. You can just send me the conclusion. You can send me anything. Or better yet, just send me an outline. Like, this is my point 1, my point 2, my point 3, and what I'm thinking about doing. The paper is due on Saturday, November 12th, submitted to Blackboard by 11:59 p.m. I am going to stop sharing this. And so one other thing that I want to remind you of. So all of those discussion board posts were due this past week. The one on the yellow wallpaper, the one on a rose for Emily, and the one on everyday use. All of them either had as their topic conflict or theme. My goal is to finish all of those by this week, so you'll have comments on them, and then that way you can go back and look at them and decide. That might help you which one that you want to do for your paper assignment. So I'll try to finish those by Friday, if not sooner. But if you have any questions in the meantime about the paper assignment, feel free to email me. And as I said before, send me anytime I outline the draft that you might want to send me. Okay, take care. Bye.